Hi, everybody. You are listening to Judging Meghan. And not only are you fortunate enough to hear me today when I'm still recovering from being sick, which seems like it will never end, I have two guests today. I've only done one other episode with two guests, ladies. So this is a first.
All right.
A second. Sorry,
Feel honored.
It's a second. So I have my two.
Well, it's my first threesome, Meghan. So
It's your. Oh, well, we're already getting
Me
into
as well.
it before we start.
Me as well.
I think you guys that come to my podcast to hear about stories about trauma and grief, maybe this is a new Sex with Meghan and Vicky and Jackie. No, I'm joking. So you're listening to Judging Meghan with your host, Meghan Judge. I left that out. I'm recovering from being sick. There you go. I have an blocked ear. My ear has been clogged since October 31st, Halloween. So I finally, after being on medication, eardrops, I'm going to the ENT tomorrow. So for all of you all over the world that want breaking news, there you go. I'm going to the ENT tomorrow. I am so excited for today. So Vicky's actually one of my best friends, and Jackie is a friend of mine as well. And they are actually starting a new podcast. So I told both of them, when you get this thing going, you need to come on the podcast, my podcast, because friends support friends, number one. And number two, I love your idea. I think it's super important. Jackie already has a podcast, which we'll talk about, but there's so many podcasts out there. Do you all know this? I'm going to tell you and my audience, there are over 3 million podcasts, 3 million. And the average podcast lasts 7 episodes. So there's seven episodes. Ladies, you better make it past 7 episodes.
Yeah, we will.
I'm gonna have to pull this episode and pretend like I don't know you. Joking.
Vicky and Jackie, who?
Yeah. So their podcast is coming out in January. We already had like a little mishiga about when it should be coming out in January. I said no on January 1st. If you would like to reach out to them and tell them yes, or when you think they should launch it, maybe that's a good way to get you guys to follow them and listen. So their podcast is called Jackie and Vicky Podcast. Life after divorce, only funnier. We've all been put here for a reason, and we all deserve acceptance.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.
I'm a trauma survivor from a really young age, and I have been diagnosed with complex PTSD in the past few years. I've been surrounded by death and abuse much of my life. I've been dragged through the mud and have been to the point of not wanting to go on anymore. Through my interviews with other survivors, I've learned that there is a way out. From recovering to surviving and thriving, we all have the strength to come out the other side.
You are listening to Judging Meghan.
Guys, how did that title come about? Come on.
Vicky, let him know. Well, I am still going through it. Mm-hmm. But when I was separated, I think one of the biggest things for me is you are just, as I call it, thrust into the lion's den of family court and just lost. And one of my biggest resources at that time was my therapist, Dr. Nadine Macaluso, how we also met, Meghan and I.
How we met, yeah. And Jackie, she referred, you had Dr. Nay on too. Sorry to talk over.
Yeah. She's amazing. And she referred me to Jackie and as a resource for a divorce coach. And I had I'll be honest, I was like, what the heck is a divorce coach? Like,
not unusual.
I was just like, any resource I could have to help me other than paying my attorney $1 million an hour, to vent. And I have specific memories of being at tournaments with my kids and being on the phone with Jackie, just like crying or, explaining things to me in layman terms, or like, what is the process? Like, you're just like, literally, what the fuck is happening? Mm-hmm. So she was an amazing resource in that way. And it just, when you feel out of control, when you don't even understand what are the next steps, what does this mean? So to have her there was invaluable to me. And then over time, it switched from coach to one of my closest friends. And then I think as time went, I mean, I am almost 3 years in, Meghan, if you can believe this or not. We realized like we have great chemistry. And not only that, there's a need for this. There's a need for community. There's a need to laugh. There's a need to feel like you're not alone and that there is a next chapter, all of this bullshit. There is so much heaviness. So we're like, let's make people laugh and know they're not alone. And there is life after divorce. And guess what? Not to say I'm not promoting divorce by any means. No one gets married to get divorced, okay? But now that you're in this situation, it can even be better than it was before.
100%.
So that's for me, but I really don't know what I would have done without Jackie, without that process, and especially in the beginning.
Okay, let me just backpedal a little. I love saying backpedal. 'Cause I didn't really properly introduce you both, and I want Jackie's answer as well. But Jackie is honestly like, we're friends. We've actually never met in person. We've been trying to meet in person. We recorded together like over a year ago, probably at this point.
Yeah.
So you all, if you're listening, you can go back and listen to Jackie's episode because there's so much good information. And since that time, I've sent Jackie women that have reached out to me. And, you know, this is a common thing. Just like I did an episode a couple of weeks ago. So the majority of my audience happens to be female. But if you're a male and you're listening to this, I think it's even better because what's better than knowing about what women are going through? And maybe you're single and you're like, how do I get a woman in her 40s and 50s to go out with me? Well, sir, you have come to the right place.
It's a plethora.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is just like talking about divorce and aging and all of the things that we talk about, I've been really into like perimenopause and menopause and I just had a guest on that's a local Manhattan Beach doctor, Dr. Shaw, and I went to her and the information she gave me after 2 hours, I was blown away. I had an appointment with her, but this all kind of goes hand in hand. We don't talk to each other about loss, meaning when you're having at the age of having babies, you have a miscarriage. Nobody talks about it. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, move on. When you get into your late 30s and 40s and you hit something called perimenopause, nobody talks about it. Like you just suddenly go to a doctor that doesn't understand it and they say, here's an antidepressant. Also, people are I think women in general, when they go through a bad marriage, a high conflict marriage, and that you hit your 40s and 50s, I'm just using those ages because we become stronger with age. That's the best thing about being a woman is we start to go, you know what? I'm freaking not okay with this. I'm going to stand up for myself. And so there's certain things where you're like, get to an age, you mature, or you get to a boiling point in a marriage with, and I'm not using you as examples, but other people, abuse, financial abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. And women get to a point and they say enough. So that's my soapbox moment before I introduce you. But Vicky, I met through Dr. Nay. Like I said, I was on a walk one day and I saw this girl and she was looking out at the ocean and she had tears welling in her eyes. And we had followed each other because of Dr. Nay. And she looked at me and she goes, Meghan. And I go, Vicky. And that we became friends that day.
I did not know that story, you guys.
Yeah,
that
and
makes me want to cry.
I mean, it was I feel the tears. Thank God I'm wearing glasses.
Yeah.
Because that was, I think I told you, one of the first days I'd showered, and I don't even remember. And I was like, you know what, now I'm going to do this. I'm going to take my dog for a walk. And it was really just meant to be. It's true. Yeah.
It was meant to be. And it was also, so I'm very open about my friend breakup and these women who I like to call the Karens, which Carter, one of my best friends from growing up, told me today. Meghan, what if you have listeners named Karen? I'm sorry if your name's Karen and you're listening. I'm not talking about you, Karen. I'm talking about like, I just named them. Their name could be like Joanna, the Joannas, but I just use the name Karen, and maybe I should change it to like a name that nobody has, because I would never want to hurt somebody's feelings that didn't deserve it, or put somebody in a box because of a name that their parents gave them. But I happen to use these women because of the name several years ago associated with being a Karen. So these women really destroyed me. They continue to mess with me. No lie. Yes.
Wow.
I mean, Vicky knows.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like it's bad. And I sent a not very nice text message to one of them, who I didn't even know was a Karen. I thought she was Karen adjacent, but she is definitely a Karen. And from what I was told, she was making fun of me at a public function, a mass, literally at someone's house.
What?
They were trashing me and making fun of me. And a friend of mine overheard it and was like, that is not okay. And so your friend Meghan is a hothead and Irish and has an Irish Italian humor, temper, but humor too. Decided to send a little love note via text message to the Karen adjacent newly crowned Karen.
Wow.
And just said, like, I kind of went off, and we'll never take it back. I just said, I thought you were holy. I know that you hold rosaries.
I thought you were holy.
Yeah. Like, I know that you believe in like having rosary parties.
Try holier than thou.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not, I mean, so I feel like I went through my own divorce in a separate way, but it was from friends. And I'm telling you, Vicky knows this. I have gone through multiple deaths and losses in my life. There was nothing more painful than what I went through with these women. And on that note, did I take up 15 minutes? Welcome to the podcast, ladies.
You know what, though? It is such a good point, Meghan, because the point being, you went through a horrible time in a relationship, a major breakup, a public shaming, ridicule and emotional abuse and all these things that we have that are parallel to, the divorces Vicky and I went through. And the point being, I could pick out, and I hope you laugh at this because this is the point of our podcast, 5 or 6 things there that we can make total fun of and end up cracking up. And that's what we're trying to get at, because we're not making fun of anyone and what they've been through, but you have to find some levity at some point, right? Because it's so ridiculous. Like, she's in freaking church. Like, as a grown woman, like are you kidding me? Like, it's ridiculous. And that's where Vicky and I found ourselves in these conversations. They would start out serious or emotional, tears, one of us calling the other. And by the end, we were just laughing our asses off. Am I wrong, Vicky?
No, I mean, and that's what you need, right? In those situations. And on that, I mean, just the beginning intro of our podcast. Okay, we're going to say these numbers to you, Meghan. Okay.
Let's watch your face.
Someone who doesn't know, and we just want your reaction. Okay. So between us
right now, this is on YouTube. So ready for my YouTube watchers.
Are you ready?
This is our intro, but we're going to do a little sneak peek.
We're going to do a little sneak peek. So this is, and we have to, these are numbers between us as it relates to our cases. Okay. Like between both of us, 21 attorneys. Okay. $2.5 million in counting in legal fees, 3 trials, 14 ex parties. What is it? How many therapists is it that we have?
12 therapists, 9 judges.
Yeah. 1 minors counsel.
4 forensic accountants.
That's her. Thank you. 4 forensic accountants and 1 divorce coach. Did I miss anything?
5 settlement conferences. That I think that about
Sounds
sums
like
it
a
up.
Christmas carol.
we thought about approaching it that way.
21 attorneys, 2. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I know I'm privy to some of this because my face is not as shocked as probably the listeners is.
Mm-hmm.
What is a something party?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask that. I'm glad you did. Go ahead,
Okay.
Vicky, because you have more under your belt than I do.
An ex party can be like an emergency order or a hearing you have while you're getting divorced. So to have that number is extreme. You shouldn't have that many hearings, basically.
It's an emergency hearing. So one party feels that something's occurring that justifies the judge to hear it immediately. And so within 48 hours, usually you'll be in front of a judge because of this. Otherwise, when you have a hearing, they're 3, 4, or 5 months out. So it's to have 14 ex parties is ridiculous.
Okay. And let me piggyback on this because something you said was finding the humor. Just so you know, and I talk about this very openly. I've been doing this for 3.5 years, I think, close to 3.5 years. Humor saved my life. So women really, really need this from you both. And it's so important because I have sent you people, Jackie and Vicky. I've sent you friends or women that have reached out to me that, are like, I'm going through this divorce. I don't want to live, whatever it be. I think that's why this is so needed in this space. Like I talked about, talking about aging, talking about divorce. The average divorce actually in general of women takes place in their 40s and 50s. So there's a lot of women in this age group that are like, why am I going through this at this age? So it's so needed. Also, the difference between both of you is that you both have come out of high conflict divorces. Vicky can't share as much, but I will have Vicky back on in due time. Jackie can. Jackie has her own podcast. Jackie, can you share with my listeners what your podcast is called so they can check that out too?
Yeah. So my podcast is called Out of Crazy Town, Your Guide to Divorcing a Narcissist. And I basically have on multiple different kinds of professionals, right, in the divorce world, as well as survivors and, just people that have been through it. So you can hear everything from, fraud and hiding assets to how spousal support works to just someone who comes on even anonymously and starts to tell their story just so, you can hear, and from the more serious side, of what's gone on, but how they've survived as well. And so that's my podcast. And I'm in my 3rd season, you could call it. And my episodes, they don't come out as often as yours, but they're in the 40s in terms of how many episodes I have. And so I've had such great feedback and such amazing comments from people that keep me going every day. And I am so passionate about this other version of how we can help people with Vicky, because like she said, we have just formed such a bond. And a lot of that is over laughter because like I said earlier, we'd start a conversation off in tears or shock or horror. And by the end, we'd be like, just like professing our love for each other and like laughing through tears, And we said, not every woman has somebody like this. Let's be that for other women.
I was going to say that for me was the biggest thing besides you being my coach, Jackie, is I would meet so many people like, are there more divorced women like where we live? Right. And we all live in the same town. I don't know. I feel like I'm the only one and we live in let's say a very affluent area, right? I think that's fair to say where it looks like all perfect, this and that. So I would get that a lot. And that makes me feel sad, because I was fortunate with Jackie, with you, or I have friends that were divorced before me. I was fortunate to have such a support group. So for me, that's also a big piece of it. Like, you're not alone. And it's going to be more than okay. We're going to laugh. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jackie.
Not at all.
But I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I don't want people to feel like they're alone, that life is over, that there isn't going to be laughs. And I've laughed more, Meghan, in these last, maybe not the first year of my divorce, but this last year laughed more than I have in 20 years. Truly. And
what is that? What does that say about? I mean, you two in particular came out the other side. It's obviously still a work in progress when there's kids involved. But I will say this: there was a lady that I sent you, and she was talking to me, and she in the very beginning stages of divorce, and she said, no, I think everything's okay. And I said, well, just go talk to them. And then all of a sudden things weren't okay, because things are pulled when there's money involved, right? Like maybe the men, and again, I hate to bash men. There's a lot of great, great men in this world.
For sure.
Yes, we say
I
that all the
happen
time.
to be married to one of them, although he does get concerned that I surround myself with divorcees constantly, but that's okay.
Hey, Meghan, try being a divorce coach in this community where all of a sudden your friends' husbands are like, you're hanging out with Jackie a lot. What's going on there?
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Ron's always like, do you want to tell me something? And I'm like, no, but he knows all about like Vicky and it's probably, and I've been, by the way, to a divorce, like party, not a party, but like a gathering Vicky brought me to, and it was myself and all her friends that were going through divorce, and they were like sharing stories and all this stuff. And I actually left the gathering and went, wow, that's such an example of how women can really lift each other up and be so great, so there's, like you said, there's good things to come out of getting out of a highly dysfunctional and unhappy marriage. Why 100%. Do you want to spend the rest of your life miserable or scared or controlled or beaten inside and out? I mean, I can say my own mom went through a horrific divorce with an alcoholic abuser, and she got out, and same thing, spent a ton of money, and he had forged documents, and it was horrible. And so I call him the original Dirty John. So I think what you're doing is so important, because women really need to, this is an example of women leaning on each other and having hope. Like, we all have to give each other hope. And that's when I talk about women being assholes, like the Karens. Yeah, maybe it's because at the root of everything, they're unhappy. Maybe I don't hate to talk about myself. I will talk about myself again. Maybe the reason why they're spending their time making fun of me is because, guess what? I know this about myself. I'm a freaking good friend. Really good friend.
You're a great friend. You're an amazing friend.
I am funny. I'm still kind of cute. I have like 5 good summers left of being cute. I'm fun.
You have way more than that.
And I live my life trying to help other people. Like, this podcast is my passion. I love to help other people. So when I take myself out of knowing that they were trashing me and I look at them, I have to feel pity for them. And that in turn is a question that goes to both of you. How do you feel about, I don't want to bring up your ex-husbands, but like, how do you feel about me? I'll give that one to Jackie. How about that?
Sure. So how do I feel about my ex-husband?
Well,
sure.
How do you feel?
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay.
Use my question. Basically,
I love this question.
How do you feel about where you are today, knowing that you're being trashed in our small community? Because we talked about this on the episode, and I am as well, even though I didn't divorce a man, I divorced a group of friends.
Mm-hmm.
how do you feel about yourself? What do you tell yourself on a daily basis when you know you're going to walk down the streets in this small community and people are going to be whispering about you? There you go.
Yep.
That's
I
my question.
absolutely am obsessed with this. I'm going to take it off on a slightly different tangent, but because I remember a moment during my divorce when I was actually in my backyard in my pajamas. It was probably 1 PM. I was so stressed out and living in a state of fear constantly that I would do what I called wandering. I couldn't focus on anything for 5 minutes. So I would literally look up and the 2 hours had passed and I'd been wandering around my house. I mean, no joke. And I sat down in my backyard on this thing and I thought, I can't live like this. This is like, I can feel my brain breaking. I can feel my body getting sick. I'm giving, real estate in my head. Vicky and I talked about this on one of the episodes recently that we are currently editing, but that, giving all this real estate in my head to this person, and it's not doing me any good. And what do I do? And so, Meghan, I have worked so hard and I'm so passionate about this. And I talk with clients about it when they're ready, when they get there, but about focusing on yourself and your future. And that is what pulls you out of it. And your emergency lifeline is being grateful, right? For the things that you have. And so I always start with my kids. When I'm in a really spiraling place, it's hard to go grateful. And so I go to the obvious. My kids are healthy. And I find these tools to help myself pull myself out of the black hole. And then I've worked really hard to basically shrink every neural pathway that has to do with my past and with anybody in the ex-husband or otherwise that doesn't deserve any mental space in my head. And so I barely think about them. That's the winning. That's how I'm winning. And 2, yes, I feel bad for them because when you get far away enough from it and you start to take all that energy and control back for yourself, I'm not surprised that the Karens are grouping together and recruiting more Karens. You want these like-minded people to justify your way of thinking. And that is what they're doing. I mean, they live in this negative space. And for one of them to pull themselves out would be a major feat for them and would take a lot of work and a lot of self-reflection. And none of them are willing to do that. And so what they're doing to feed their black holes and to, feel good about themselves is just recruiting more Karens. And so I'm not surprised by that.
What about you, Vicky? Can you kind of in a roundabout, so the audience knows, Vicky's still in the process of all of this. Like she said, 3 years. Jackie, you're finalized, correct?
I've been final for a few years now.
Okay, so finalized. And might I add that Jackie is doing great and about to get married soon, I think, to a very dashing man. So there is life on the other side. There is hope.
Just looking at her for me, I'm telling you, has been not just as a coach, but just her life in general. Like when you talk about hope, I mean, that's it. And just if I could say one thing, we have an episode about winning, by the way, about how we are winning everything from like, I can buy raspberries again because I was banned to buy raspberries. It's not a joke. It's just like, we have, that's like, so just made me think of one of our episodes. But I think if I could go back to your question.
Yeah, go ahead. And by the way, really quickly, I don't want to interrupt you. Ladies, you don't need a man to be complete. I'm just saying there is life after divorce. And if you do meet someone, man, woman, whatever, in my situation, if I got a divorce, I would move to a farm and have cows and as many Labradors as I want. And I've told my husband that, and he thinks I'm crazy. So there's joy, there's happiness, and for sure. And I know that's in store for Vicky as well, who's pretty much one of my favorite people on the planet. So go ahead, Vic.
Meghan. Thank you guys. Oh, no, what can I say after that? But it's actually a great point. These connections, like when I'm having a tough time, I wouldn't have these connections with the two of you who have come to be so important in my life if I didn't go. Not that I wish divorce, again, to be clear.
Right.
But now that I'm in this, I wouldn't have had these connections. And frankly, connections I already had with people are even stronger now. right? But I would never have met with you guys. I'd never be here today, right? The list goes on. So I think about that. But another thing I wanted to say is in the beginning of my process, not that I want to say concern, but I was cognizant of what are people going to say about me? Are they going to judge me? Are they going to judge my children? Most importantly. And I definitely went through stuff, with people. And that was disappointing. But then as time went on, and I think Jackie made an excellent point where I started to kind of come out of the fog or the twilight zone a bit and she would say that to me too, by the way, about my future, started focusing on my future, then that stuff became less and less important. And then I also became more vocal about my story, and it kind of empowered me more, where before I was like embarrassed and almost ashamed of it. It kind of turned to be more empowering. And then it's like, this is who I am. This is my story. And if you choose not to be in my life with that, well, that's fine. Because look at the connections, like the two of you I have in my life, right? So I think the shift, like to piggyback on what Jackie was saying, was focusing on my future for sure, which is something. And then, like I said, the door just kind of opened to all these people in my life that really filled my cup. So I think it wasn't an overnight thing. I mean,
Right.
It took me, and there's still, there's peaks and valleys. You guys both know. For me, it's so night and day for me now.
There's peaks and valleys in life, but don't you think, and I'm just guessing, because what you just said struck me, and maybe you can both answer this. I think my divorce, and I love that I'm now in a divorce because I have to be able to but I do honestly, Vicky can tell you, I do feel like I went through a divorce.
I agree. I think
I agree with you too.
I think it's a perfect name for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like now I'm starting a podcast called Meghan Judge, Life After Divorce Only Funnier. But it's now part
you
2.
Can't steal our tagline.
Oh, I'm not
Meghan.
allowed to do that.
No.
I didn't know. Oh, okay.
Copyright infringement for sure.
Okay. No, but seriously, divorce is a totally separate thing. But sometimes when Vicky and I chat, she's my person. We call each other when we're struggling a lot. And she's like, Meghan, I can relate to what you're saying in a different way. And I can say, I can relate to what you're saying in a different way, because friendships, women, the way that women treat each other, we treat each other so well. And then we also treat each other. And this is my favorite word. And my audience is going to be really mad at me right now, especially like my mom. But my favorite term right now is bag of dicks. We do treat each other like a bag of dicks.
I'm stealing it.
I just said it.
Like a really,
it's
one of my favorite
podcast.
phrases.
Bag of dicks is going to make an appearance on the podcast, Vicky, for sure.
I'm like, I apologize to my listeners in other countries. It's not a very nice term, but it's something that gives me like great joy in my mind. And now I tend to use it. And so if you are listening to that and offended by that term, it's like, I have to be able to say it. Kids, don't listen to this podcast, please. So yeah, I mean, relationships are one of the most healing things that you can find. And my roundabout long question was, do you feel like what you've gone through has made you a better person?
Do you want me to?
Either of you can
take it away, Vicky.
I hate to, I'm such a better person now. It's not, I don't know if it's better. I can tell you I am more me than I've been in 20 years. I don't know if that answers your question. I think I don't know if better is the right word. I'm stronger. I've learned a lot more about myself.
You're empathetic.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I think, I don't know if better is the right word, but definitely stronger. And I'm definitely, you know what? more, yeah, maybe in some ways better in the sense of more like I want to help more people. Does that make me better? Like I don't look at it just to be about me. Hence one of the reasons Jackie and I started this, right, is to help others. But my biggest thing is, maybe it sounds cliche, but really just, I feel like myself again, but a better version.
If I can follow up on that, here's Coach Jackie's making an appearance right now. I can't help myself.
I love Coach Jackie. Let's go.
Watching Vicky on her journey and having been there since almost like immediately after the very beginning of it, I can say, and watching all my clients, frankly, when you get to that point where you want to start to help other people because of what you've been through, it is such a huge moment in your healing and in your journey that just signifies you're going to be okay, that you are turning a corner to success, that you are now focusing on yourself. And so it's part of the process to want to turn and help run back and get the people that, you know, are still back there struggling. And so I love that Vicky is at that point and watching her be there, because it's such my heart just wants to explode. And I have to say a funny story about our coach client relationship. I remember once when we had really just started like turning into friends, and I called her and I said, okay, we are officially no longer coach client. I'm calling you as a friend. I have to bitch about this thing. And I just vomited for a half an hour. And I'm like, okay, because I had to make sure it wasn't unprofessional.
I was like, yes, okay, but waiting for this moment. I want you to be my friend.
And then I think I didn't stop talking for half an hour, screaming, throwing things, whatever, you know, having a bad moment in my day. And it was awesome. And then again, at the end, we were laughing. So, you know.
So all of this horrible mess, if you will, because divorce is like death, right? It's like having a death. The grief, the pain, the anger, except that person is still on the planet. So I would imagine even harder. And that goes back to my own divorce with those women. Like I say, I would rather I lost my dad, my sister, my best friend. I feel like what I go through on a daily basis, having to see them, having to hear that they're trashing me, all the things that they've done is harder. I mean, honestly. So that's why I compare it to the divorce with
I think we should also point out, Meghan, I just want to be clear, we, and not to speak for Jackie, but had high conflict divorces. Do you know what I mean? Like, not every divorce is like mine or like Jackie's.
And we said that in the beginning.
Good.
Yeah. Because I have friends that, you know, people, it's not as common, but they amicably split, you know, and they just go, we're not, what is it? Gwyneth Paltrow and
the uncoupling? Is that uncoupling?
Conscious uncoupling.
But like, let's be real. That's way more rare than a lot of the things, and especially what you deal with, Jackie, for your job and what you've seen in these support groups that you guys have managed to help other women with. But it's a form of loss. It's a form of grief, and it's very, very painful, I would imagine. So can you kind of touch on that piece of it?
The pain and the grief and the loss, for sure. It's the bizarre thing for me was I was, on one hand, depending on the nature of your relationship or your marriage, so ecstatic to be free and not be under the same roof, so to speak. And you know, the control, there was that level of control in the particular environment was gone. However, when you're in a high conflict divorce, what happens is something kicks in called post-separation abuse, which I talked to you about when I was on your podcast before, Meghan. And it's when controlling spouses, turning ex-spouses, have lost control of the things they normally control, being under the same roof, seeing you every day, doing those things. So now they pick up different weapons, and that's the financial abuse, the legal abuse, et cetera. So it's tough because you're on this journey where you're dealing with somebody who is now picking up different weapons along the way, and you're having to try to grieve your marriage. You're trying to establish this new relationship where you have children involved, and there are different emotions every day. And so there's what I call the 3-year rule. And it is, the first year is absolutely horrific. The second year is all the same stuff, but now you're used to it. So it's not as bad because it's like, oh, these crazy, unbelievable things are now kind of normalized. And then the third year, you're more focusing on yourself and you're actually starting to see glimpses of light at the end of the tunnel. And you're, you're have the ability to focus on yourself. And so, yeah, there's definitely grief. There's all the stages of grief as if somebody died, but with all this chaos mixed in. That's the best
And then
way I can
also,
describe
like,
it.
if you were married to somebody that was like narcissistic, or you were in a trauma bond, I'll use Dr. Nay as an example because we all know her. And her new book, by the way, Run Like Hell, will be out in January. So I'm going to give her a little plug.
Yes.
I have asked her, because she's been on many times, how she's gotten to the point where she is now. Does Jordan, because she's so open with the story, I'll use her, did the things that he does, because they still have conflict, they have grown kids now, does he bother her? Is she still affected by it? And it's not like, I can't imagine she would say it doesn't affect her at all, but it's almost like the saying, will this matter 5 years from now? I say this to myself all the time. Literally, I really do. Because when I call Vicky in tears, which I have many, many times over the years, and I'm using my own example as well, I'll say, well, will this matter in 5 years? For my case, no, it's not going to matter anymore. And that's kind of what has helped me survive this. Do you feel like, Vicky, that that's something that you say to yourself, like as you go through the stages, you're on the way out, whereas Jackie is kind of in a different place, Dr. Nay's in a different place, just to be able to see the future and know that you will be in a different place, and in time,
I think you touched on it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And the hope, right? And then little victories were, to be frank, when Jackie was saying, you become like in anything, sadly desensitized a bit, right? Remember the first time I went to court, Jackie was there. And I couldn't stop shaking because it's very intimidating, the whole thing, the courthouse and where do I park and blah, blah, blah. And now I was in court last week. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to my usual parking spot. Like, hey, Joe, security card.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, what's up, guys? Yeah. You know, it's just different. By the way, it's not fun. I'm not like, yay, but no. I'm like, okay, like here we are.
You wouldn't let me.
I know this judge.
You wouldn't let me come with you. Remember, I was like, I did just for my audience and for Jackie. I was like, I've always wanted to. This is the former actress in me. I was like, can I be there and can I like wear a suit and walk in and pretend like I'm part of the jury? And then I was like,
there's no jury. It's family court. Meghan.
I know, but like,
I wish there was a jury. It might be a little more normal.
The actress in me was like, and I tried to help her with like her stuff she had to do. And then we did it like one time and she was like, okay, have a nice day. Never asked me to help her again. Cause I can't be serious. I'm just not good in those situations.
It's so true though. I mean, your nervous system couldn't take it if you didn't have to move it to the next category of almost normal though. You know what I mean? You can't live in that because I was the same way, Vicky. My 100%. First time in court, the shaking was visible. It was uncontrollable. Court is the most unnatural, horrible thing in the world. It's awful. It's an awful place. The building's depressing. The rooms there are no windows.
So depressing. There's no windows. You're like, there's no escape. Like I can't even like.
And then a person who won't remember your name tomorrow is screaming lies at you. Their attorneys of things you've never done. I mean, it's like, it's literally.
No, it's so traumatic. It's almost like I felt like I was on a soap opera. I'm like, this would be sort of entertaining if it wasn't my life.
Yes.
You know, like in a weird, like bad Lifetime movie. But to answer your question, I think I look at little wins where before, I mean, I would be decimated by stuff. And now, don't get me wrong, it still bothers me, but give me a day and I'm pretty good to go. And I consider that a win. And then I do say to myself, this too shall pass. This is one day. It's to your point, it's going to be gone tomorrow. in a year, I had this dream at the beginning, way beginning, where I'm on this beach and I'm in one of those beach chairs. What I call it? Not the Android one, but it's like there's linen in the middle, like a fold out wooden chair. Anyway, it was very specific. And I'm watching my children play in the ocean. And it's one of those beautiful days, glistening. And I just have this overwhelming feeling of peace. And I really clung to that image, and I still do. And I think about it a lot because this can't go on forever. And this too shall pass. And it's after this, it'll be done and we'll all move on and it'll be a blip. Maybe not a blip, but after a time, it will be a blip, you know, of my life. So yes, to answer your question, I do think about that.
Also, from when I met you and we met each other, what, like 3 years ago, maybe 2.
Yeah, almost 3 years ago. Yep.
And we were both like drooling on the Strand. The Strand is a path like next to the beach in LA where we live. And just to see where you are today. And I feel like when I talk to you, and I have to remind you of that, like, cause you're going to have your bad days just like I do. And Jackie does. I do. Just to go, oh my God, look at where you are. Look at what you've done. Look at where you're going.
But that's why I'm so lucky to have you guys though, because you remind me of that. Cause I think when you're in it, it's hard to see. And I only got to those points, like, thanks to you guys to remind me. And that goes back to community and wanting to reach out to other women to hopefully make them laugh and remind them of how they are winning. And, you know, that is my hope, because we all need that in life. Like you said, there's peaks and valleys, life in general, right? And that's where you need your community the most, I think, to really lift you up.
Well, and you know,
go ahead.
Something that Vicky had said too, that she recognizes herself again, or she knows herself again. And one thing, I mean, looking back, like I said, because our first phone call was there, you know, was unrecognizable to the Vicky right now. But one common thread amongst every woman I've ever worked with is they are extremely intelligent. And Vicky is extremely intelligent. She is beautiful, outgoing. I mean, like, all the compliments that you could possibly give a woman, an amazing mother.
Okay.
And you don't, when you've just been through a lot, and again, this goes through every woman I've worked with, yet you're just a former shell of that person. And so watching her get back there, watching all of my clients get back there has been such a joy in my job. But yeah, it's a long journey, but it's interesting you say this too shall pass. I had a coin that said this too shall pass that I would hold and rub the shit out of it when I was in court or depositions or all these things, because Vicky, that's exactly the mindset I had. And we've never talked about this, but you have to remember this is a blip. It is a blip, a moment in time. Time will move on, whether you like it or not. And, you know, you have bigger and better things ahead of you. And the fact that you had that vision always is something we've never talked about this either, but I do tell a lot of clients, have that one vision that you hold on to and do not let go. So you and the boys on the beach. Yeah. It's
or like the trip. Can I come on that trip is my next question.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'll go. We'll be like, you know, like walking down the beach. I picture like, what is that commercial with the white robe? It's for anyway. I'm sidetracking. I do have a question.
Yes.
Okay. So right now I have listeners that I'm sure are going through the very beginning stages of divorce, and they are beside themselves, whether it be a high conflict divorce or just a divorce in general. What are some things that you could tell that woman or man or anybody that's listening to get through, like some very easy things that you wish you would have known back then?
I'm gonna let you coach Jackie.
You have to spend the resources to get a team that's going to be able to support you, because I think it's really easy to sit in your house and receive emails from your attorney and from your probably from your ex that are threatening or whatnot if they're going to be in a high conflict situation, and just spiral and spiral. And so, I mean, this is super basic, but I tell everyone to do this. I told my daughter to do this the other day. Go outside, breathe. You have to breathe. People forget to breathe. You have to go outside. You have to call someone you trust. And this is the time to ask for help. So you ask for help from people you need. And oftentimes when you're a very empathetic person that's maybe been in a controlling relationship, you've stopped asking for help. A lot of people, even your close friends, don't know everything that's been going on. It's the time to start talking about it. And it's the time to start asking those people for help. You need it. You would pay it back. You would do the same thing for them. And so that is my advice. And you know, get the resources. I don't care if it's a divorce coach, but the right therapist, you know, that good friend, reconnect with that person that your spouse didn't let you talk to anymore. You know, do all those things to support yourself. You have to.
If
Vicky,
I can piggyback on that,
yeah.
And I'm just, again, I'm sorry to keep, you know, beating a dead horse, but if it's a high conflict divorce, to piggyback on what she said, I think the way you start, I think it's actually Jackie that told me this, but the way you start your case is really huge, the way you start. So it is building your team around you, attorneys, therapists, support, like Jackie was saying, a divorce coach, in my opinion. I can't tell you again enough how huge that was for me. Making sure you have the right people around you and to advocate you and your support is tremendous. Tremendous.
I also remember, Jackie, you saying something when you came on the podcast like a year plus ago, have a plan and never let, maybe that's Vicky. Somebody told me this, never let if you're in the beginning stages and you haven't left yet, always have a plan and never let them see you coming, especially if you're in a high conflict situation. Is that correct?
Dr. Nay probably told you that as well, because she and I work together a lot, and she says that a lot, and she's correct. I mean, again, you have to really consider who you're divorcing. You know them better than anyone. And if you're terrified to go through a divorce, even though you haven't even taken any steps yet, that's your indicator right there that it's because you know it's not going to be an easy one. And so, yes, you need to sit down, consult any type of professional whose input that you need, and get a strategy in place, find out what, you know, all the things that you need to gather. And Vicky and I, actually, Vicky, we should bring this up now. Vicky and I are going to be putting on a workshop for people that has to do with getting ready for divorce and all the resources, custody, finance, et cetera. And because there's a lot that goes into it, into the plan. So it's a really good point, Meghan.
Okay. So now we got through the like tough stuff, but we really want to incorporate humor in life, and your podcast will be doing that. What are some funny things that you can give women hope of seeing humor in, whether it be in the court system, whether it be, just give me some examples.
You know, we have an episode that's about like how the family court is a 3-ring circus. And Vicky, I don't know if you want to talk about what we talked about on our podcast, but I was thinking about this morning because there's an example I didn't talk about. And I was sitting in a courtroom with a client, and you just look back on the theatrics and the drama that goes on. And at the time, it's like so upsetting and so stressful. And then you look back and they're absolutely ridiculous. And I was sitting in one case where they were fighting over how much the house was worth. And husband was trying to say the house was worth nothing because he was going to have to buy wife out. So his attorney kept going on and on about how the new floors they put in the house were laminate. They weren't really wood. And she was like, well, okay, but you know, we redid all the floors and it really upgraded the house. It looks great now, but they're not wood, are they? Well, no, I mean, but they're that laminate that looks really good now. You know, they do really great things and it looks, but they're laminate, aren't they? I mean, I was like, and he would not stop with the laminate. And finally the judge says, counselor, we understand that the floors are laminate. Like, could you please move on? But that was his big go-to, was he was really going to stick her with the purchase price of the house because the floors were laminate. They were really wood. But you're like, later we left there and I actually spent the night with my client that night, and because it was a faraway case, and we had a glass of wine, and it was just 4 hours later, laughed until we cried. I mean, the laminate floor. So the stories go on, Meghan.
Like just stories of like court, also like all of the things that you both could give as far as the court system, custody, all of that information that I think my listeners that might be listening, or if you're listening and you have a friend that's going through this, please, I'm telling you, they both have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this subject. And also, just great people, great ladies. I mean, we touched on earlier. I know that Vicky's spiritual. I don't know if you are, Jackie. It's hard right now with what's going on in the world, to always find hope and make sure that you keep, for me, my faith, I try to always keep at the forefront, or some kind of spirituality. It has gotten me through so many hard things in my life. Do you lean on spirituality or faith or whatever? How do you get through all this stuff?
I do. Personally, I do for sure. I've had certain visions, at least for me, not visions like I'm a clairvoyant, but in my mind that really helps me personally, where I do think that there's someone or something, however you want to poise it, that is protecting me and guiding me and my boys. And I definitely feel I've had guardian angels along the way, yourselves included. I say that a lot. I think Jackie has said that a lot to me too, with certain things and the way they've gone. Because there's so many different pathways you can take in family court, or things that, I don't know. I definitely, to answer your question, but I've also have to say, as far as levity, I think one of my personal favorite episodes is, the rule is when your ex gets a girlfriend, you have to come up with a nickname.
Yeah.
So
I know yours. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I
don't know what you're talking about, Meghan.
I meant Jackie's.
Mine.
I don't know. Yeah. But Jackie, what about you, to answer the question? Do you what do you lean on? And it doesn't have to be spirituality. I mean, but I think it gives people hope, to know it could be anything. It could be yoga. It could be exercise. It could be any kind of outlet. So do you have some advice on that, or what you have leaned on over this time?
I do. One thing I really like to encourage people to do is first of all, find someone who's been through it and is on the other side of it that you can follow. And I mean, it can be a Mel Robbins, a Tony Robbins. I love Joe Dispenza. I love, go get on the internet. It's your friend, and just find anyone. And I obsessively listen to people every single day that are positive and that teach me things. And I've just become voracious in terms of reading and podcasts and things that just want to get me.
Oh my God, the Divorce Not Dead podcast. What's her name? Ooh. Caroline Stansbury. Isn't she Housewives of Dubai?
Yeah.
That made me feel oh my God, I'm divorced, not dead, So I love that, Jackie. You're so right. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. No. So just find your people and share it with other people, just like you did just now, Vicky. And what then I learned to do was meditate, and it was absolutely painful. It was so painful. And luckily I was listening to someone who told me it was going to be painful. And they said I was going to want to come out of my skin and scratch my eyeballs out because I was sitting in a chair, and it was awful. And so I did it for the first 15 minutes, and my brain was having a fight with itself. Just get up. You have things to do. You have all these things. And it is so worth the effort to work through that, because now that I've mastered it, and I do spend that time focusing on my future, magical things happen. And so that's sort of my religion. And yes, there's a higher being, and I do believe all that, and something guiding us. And so that's what I need and what I use. I have to have that every day, Meghan.
Okay. Well, I love these answers. I cannot wait to listen to the podcast. I'm so excited for both of you. A lot of times, I'm going to be honest. I think because Jackie, you've been doing your podcast a long time. A lot of people come to me and they say, "Oh, I want to start a podcast." And my answer is always, Do you have an idea? What do you want to talk about? Do you know that it costs money to start a podcast? It's very expensive. Do you know that you're like, do you have a website? Do you have this? Do you have that? And it's not like I'm trying to tell somebody not to do it. There's space for everybody in I think in every industry, there's space for ideas, no matter what you want to do. If you want to be creative,
Agree.
I love other podcasters. I have a ton of friends that are other podcasters. They help me. I bounce ideas off them. So there's always space and encouraging, especially other women. So when Vicky said, Meghan, Jackie, and I are going to start this podcast, I was like, yeah, you are. Yeah, you're going to do it and you're going to be good at it. And I'm going to listen because this is a good idea that I think hasn't been done. So I wanted to have you on to promote it because I know both of you and I know how smart you are and funny. And honestly, for my listeners, check it out. It's going to be out the first week in January. I love supporting other women. It's one of my favorite things that I have the ability to do with my own platform. And I'm telling you, expect great things from this podcast and these two ladies because I most certainly do. And I must tell you in closing how very, very much Vicky helped save me, honestly, save me. Because honestly, having friends was something that I didn't trust people for a long time. And then to have somebody walk in that knows my history, lives in this small town, has my back. And I have, through my own divorce, all joking aside, met the most incredible friends and incredible people. And so it was kind of a gift to go through this. I'm stronger on the other side. They are a bag of dicks. I'm going to use that term again. And you guys, I just adore both of you and I cannot wait for what's ahead. So in closing, be happy by making other people happy.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.